A black woman boards the wrong private yacht and ends up face to face with the man who abandoned her mid-trip and who never knew she had twins. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. The Mediterranean sunset painted the sky in hues of gold and crimson as Naomi Johnson leaned against the railing of the luxury cruise ship Mediterranean Grace. Salt-tinged breeze caressed her face, gently lifting strands of her dark hair as she gazed at the endless horizon where sea met sky. At 28, standing on the deck of this floating palace, she couldn't help but feel that her life had taken a turn straight out of a fairy tale. 8 months ago, she had been just another Brazilian tour guide in Barcelona, making ends meet with her modest salary, her dreams limited by practicality. Then Richard Coleman walked into her tour group, tall, commanding, with piercing blue eyes that seemed to see right through her rehearsed historical anecdotes. The CEO of Coleman Enterprises had asked her to dinner that very night, and their whirlwind romance began. Now, watching the Mediterranean waves glitter beneath the fading sunlight, Naomi hugged herself against the gentle chill, savoring this perfect moment. Tomorrow they would dock in Monaco, and Richard had hinted at a special surprise. Perhaps the diamond bracelet she'd admired in that boutique window in Rome, or maybe, her heart quickened at the thought, something more permanent. "There you are," Richard's voice, cultured with that distinct Manhattan accent, interrupted her reverie. Naomi turned, her smile widening at the sight of him approaching with 2 crystal flutes of champagne. Impeccably dressed as always in a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent in Barcelona, he looked every inch the powerful businessman. Yet something in his expression gave her pause. His smile didn't quite reach those cool blue eyes. "I thought we might toast to the sunset," he said, handing her one of the flutes. "Dom Perignon Rose Gold, $500 a bottle, only the best for our last evening together on this voyage." Naomi accepted the champagne, a small flutter of unease stirring in her stomach. "Last evening? I thought we were continuing to Monaco tomorrow?" Richard took a sip of his champagne, his gaze drifting toward the horizon rather than meeting her eyes. "About that. We need to talk about the future, Naomi." The flutter in her stomach transformed into a cold, heavy weight. She'd heard that tone before, from others, never from him. Clinical, detached, final. "I've enjoyed our time together," he continued, swirling the expensive champagne in his glass with practiced indifference. "These past months have been entertaining." "Entertaining?" Naomi repeated, her voice smaller than she intended. Richard turned to her then, his expression so businesslike she barely recognized the man who had whispered love poems against her skin just last night. "You always knew what this was, Naomi. Let's be adults about it." What it was? Her hand tightened around the delicate stem of the champagne flute. "Richard, I don't understand." He sighed as if her confusion was an inconvenience. "You've always been a convenient pastime, Naomi, an exotic experience for my list. I never thought of you as someone permanent." The words hit her like physical blows. Naomi felt the color drain from her face as the fairy tale shattered around her, glass shards of reality cutting deep. "But you said—" "I said what men say when they're enjoying themselves." Richard checked his watch, a casual gesture that somehow humiliated her more than his words. "We'll be making an unscheduled stop in Marseille tonight. I've arranged for you to disembark there." "Disembark?" Naomi's voice cracked. "You're leaving me in France?" Richard's expression remained impassive. "A woman like you would never be accepted in my circle in Manhattan, Naomi. At the Coleman family gatherings or on the boards of the companies I run, you simply don't have the pedigree, the education, or the sophistication required." Tears burned at the corners of her eyes, but Naomi refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. Not when he was looking at her as if she were a business transaction being efficiently concluded. "To be honest," he continued, his voice dropping to a colder register, "you're boring, predictable. without the polish someone in my position requires." Each word methodically stripped away her dignity, her self-worth, her identity, leaving her naked and exposed on the deck of a ship that suddenly felt hostile. The same man who had called her fascinating and captivating now found her boring. The man who had marveled at her spontaneity now labeled her predictable. The contradiction was as painful as the rejection itself. "I've arranged a return ticket to Barcelona for you." Richard reached into his jacket pocket and extracted an envelope and a credit card. "And this card has a temporary limit. It should cover your expenses until you readjust." Naomi stared at the envelope he held out, unable to move. The beautiful sunset now seemed to mock her, the expensive champagne in her hand a bitter joke. "Consider this a kindness," Richard added, his tone suggesting he deserved gratitude. "More than most would receive." Finally, Naomi found her voice. "When did you decide this? Last night when you were making love to me? Or this morning when you asked me which earrings looked better for dinner?" A flicker of discomfort crossed his face, the first genuine emotion he'd displayed. "I've always been clear about the temporary nature of vacation romances, Naomi. Don't make this difficult." "Difficult?" She almost laughed, the sound catching painfully in her throat. "You're abandoning me in a foreign country and I'm making it difficult? The ship docks in an hour. I suggest you pack." With that, Richard placed the envelope and card on the railing beside her and turned to leave. "Was any of it real?" Naomi called after him, hating the desperation in her voice but unable to stop herself. "Any of it at all?" Richard paused but didn't turn around. It was real enough while it lasted. "Goodbye, Naomi." She watched him walk away, his expensive shoes clicking against the polished deck, his posture never faltering. Only when he disappeared through the doorway did she allow the first tear to fall, then another, and another, until they flowed freely down her cheeks, mingling with the salt spray from the sea. An hour later, Naomi stood alone on the dock in Marseille, a small suitcase at her feet, watching the Mediterranean Grace pull away. The massive cruise ship, glittering with lights, seemed to take with it not just Richard, but the entire future she had foolishly begun to imagine for herself. The Mediterranean breeze, which had seemed so romantic hours earlier, now chilled her to the bone as she clutched the return ticket to Barcelona and the temporary credit card, Richard's idea of a compassionate parting gift. 3 weeks later, Naomi hunched over the grimy toilet in her cheap Barcelona hotel room, retching up what little she had managed to eat that morning. The sickness had started 2 days ago, persistent, impossible to ignore. When the nausea finally subsided, she sat back against the cold tile wall, her body trembling with exhaustion and a terrible suspicion. The pregnancy test she had purchased lay on the bathroom counter, still in its packaging. With shaking hands, she opened it, following the instructions with numb precision. 3 minutes. 3 minutes to wait for news that could destroy what little remained of her life. When the result appeared, 2 clear pink lines, Naomi's tears mingled with the lingering taste of bile. Pregnant. She was pregnant with Richard Coleman's child. With a surge of desperate hope, she grabbed her phone and dialed the only number of his she had. Probably a mistake, but she had to try. It rang 4 times before his familiar voice answered, cool and detached. "Richard Coleman." "Richard, it's Naomi." Her voice shook. "I need to talk to you. I'm pregnant." The silence that followed seemed to stretch for an eternity. "Not my problem," he finally said, his voice flat. "Probably not even mine. And even if it were, you knew what you were getting into, Naomi." The cruelty of his dismissal stole her breath. "Richard, please, take care of it or don't. The choice is yours, but don't contact me again." The line went dead before she could respond. Naomi stared at the phone in her hand, then at the positive pregnancy test on the counter. No family in the US, no permanent visa, no resources, no support, just a growing life inside her and the echoes of Richard's words. boring, predictable, without polish. That night, in the dimly lit bathroom of her cheap hotel, Naomi stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror. Her face was pale, eyes red-rimmed from crying, hair limp around her shoulders. But as she placed a protective hand over her still flat stomach, something shifted in her expression. "He's wrong about me," she whispered to her reflection. "About us, and someday I'll prove it. I'll build something so extraordinary that he'll deeply regret throwing us away, not for revenge but for justice, so my child never doubts their own worth." As her tears dried on her face, Naomi Johnson couldn't possibly imagine that 6 years later she would be on a luxury yacht in Miami, commanding $1 million empire, about to encounter the man who had discarded her as insignificant. The cracked mirror reflected a woman who refused to be broken. Naomi's whispered promise to her unborn child still hung in the stale air of the cheap hotel bathroom. As she placed her trembling hand on her stomach, the gravity of her situation crashed down upon her. Alone, pregnant, abandoned in a foreign country with dwindling savings and no support system. The following morning, Naomi walked into what would become her home for the next few months, a deteriorating studio apartment in one of Barcelona's less desirable neighborhoods. The landlord, a weathered man with yellowing teeth, didn't bother hiding his skepticism as he handed her the keys. "Rent is due on the 1st. No exceptions, no extensions," he muttered, eyeing her warily. "And no loud noises. The walls are thin." Naomi nodded, clutching the keys so tightly they dug into her palm. The apartment was barely 15 square meters, a sagging bed in one corner, a kitchenette with a hot plate in another, and a bathroom so small she could touch both walls when extending her arms. The wallpaper peeled in several places, revealing patches of mold underneath, and the single window overlooked a narrow alley that smelled perpetually of garbage. Still, it was hers, a shelter, a beginning. Her savings would last 2 months at best. With a pregnancy to consider, finding work became her immediate priority. The following day, Naomi stood in the lobby of a commercial building, waiting to interview for a cleaning position. Around her, executives in tailored suits strode purposefully across the marble floor, their leather shoes clicking authoritatively. None spared her a glance. "Next," called a stern-looking woman from behind a desk. "Johnson?" The interview lasted precisely 7 minutes. Yes, she could start at 5 tomorrow morning. Yes, she understood there was no health insurance. Yes, she acknowledged that missing work for any reason could result in immediate termination. "Thank you for the opportunity," Naomi said, her voice steadier than she felt. That night she made detailed calculations in a worn notebook. The cleaning job would cover rent and utilities, but little else. She needed more. By the end of the week, Naomi had secured 2 additional positions: afternoon shifts as a waitress at a tourist trap restaurant near La Rambla, and evening hours as a receptionist at a budget hotel. The schedule was brutal, waking at 4 in the morning and returning home after midnight, but mathematically possible. Barely. Her alarm blared at 4 the next morning, jolting her from a restless sleep. Naomi rushed to the bathroom, dropping to her knees as morning sickness overtook her. Even after emptying her stomach, she continued to retch, her body shaking with exhaustion. "You can do this," she whispered to herself, splashing cold water on her face. "You have to." The commercial building was eerily quiet when she arrived, armed with mops, brushes, and cleaning solutions that made her nausea worse. For 3 hours, Naomi scrubbed floors, emptied trash bins, and wiped down surfaces. By 8, the building began filling with workers. Men and women in expensive clothing walked across the floors she had just cleaned, some leaving muddy footprints without notice or apology. One woman stopped abruptly when her heel caught in Naomi's bucket, nearly toppling over. "Can't you do this when no one's around?" she snapped, as if Naomi had deliberately placed the bucket in her path. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Naomi murmured, keeping her eyes downcast as Richard's words echoed in her mind. "Without the polish someone in my position requires." At 10, she rushed to a public bathroom to change into her waitress uniform, a tight-fitting shirt and short skirt that would soon become impossible to wear as her pregnancy progressed. There was no time for lunch. Her shift began at 11. The restaurant catered to tourists seeking authentic Spanish cuisine, though locals knew it was anything but. Naomi balanced heavy trays, forced smiles through her exhaustion, and accepted meager tips with practiced gratitude. Her feet ached, her back throbbed, and the persistent nausea made every moment a struggle. During a rare lull, she leaned against the bar, sipping water and massaging her lower back. "Hey, careful with that tray," her manager barked as she returned to work. "Drop anything and it comes out of your pay." As if on cue, a businessman at table 7 waved his hand dismissively, knocking over his wine glass as Naomi approached. The red liquid splashed across the white tablecloth and onto her uniform. "Look what you made me do," he accused, glaring up at her. "Can't you do anything right?" Naomi apologized profusely while mopping up the spill, her cheeks burning with humiliation. The manager appeared instantly, offering free desserts to appease the customer while shooting daggers at her with his eyes. By the time she reached her night job at the hotel reception, Naomi was running on fumes. The worn desk chair offered little comfort to her aching body as she checked in late arrivals and answered phone calls. At midnight, she finally trudged home, collapsing onto her bed without bothering to undress. This punishing routine continued for weeks. Each day blended into the next in a haze of exhaustion, nausea, and growing fear about her future. Her body, supporting new life, protested the abuse. Dark circles formed permanent residences beneath her eyes, and her clothes hung looser everywhere except her gradually expanding midsection. At 12 weeks, Naomi finally scraped together enough money for a proper medical checkup. The clinic, funded by a Catholic charity, offered services to women without health insurance. The waiting room was crowded with others in similar circumstances: immigrants, homeless women, teenagers with scared eyes. Johnson called a nurse after a 2-hour wait. The examination room was clean but Spartan. The doctor, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, moved the ultrasound wand over Naomi's slightly rounded abdomen. "There," she pointed to the grainy screen. "Can you see?" Naomi squinted at the monitor, her breath catching when she made out not one but 2 tiny forms. "Is that?" she whispered, unable to complete the question. The doctor nodded, her expression softening. "Twins, 2 heartbeats, strong and regular." "Twins?" Naomi repeated, a mixture of absolute joy and terror flooding her chest. One baby had seemed impossible enough. 2 seemed unimaginable. "You'll need extra care, extra nutrition," the doctor explained, her voice gentle but concerned. "Twins often come early. Are you working?" "Yes," Naomi answered. 3 jobs. The doctor's frown deepened. "That's far too much stress for a twin pregnancy. You need rest, good food, prenatal vitamins." Walking home, Naomi's mind raced with calculations. Twins meant double everything: double the diapers, double the clothes, double the food. Her careful budget, already stretched to breaking point, would be woefully inadequate. By her 5th month, her pregnancy became impossible to hide. The restaurant manager eyed her growing belly with increasing displeasure. "Customers come here for the experience," he said one afternoon, pointing to her stomach. You're scaring them. I'm sorry, but we need to let you go." A week later, the hotel followed suit, citing concerns about her condition affecting her ability to work night shifts. In the span of 7 days, Naomi lost 2/3 of her income. Panic set in. She applied for other positions, but few employers were interested in hiring a visibly pregnant woman who would need maternity leave within months. Her savings dwindled rapidly, forcing impossible choices between food and rent, prenatal vitamins, and electricity. The final humiliation came when she stood in line at a local food bank, head bowed as she waited her turn. Around her, others in desperate circumstances shuffled forward slowly. When she reached the front, the volunteer's eyes flicked to her pregnant belly, then away. First time? The woman asked, not unkindly. Naomi nodded, shame burning her cheeks. I never thought I'd— None of us do, the volunteer interrupted, filling a bag with staples. How far along? 6 months. Twins. The woman added extra items to the bag. Come back next week. Ask for Maria. That night in her apartment, Naomi sat on the floor counting coins under the dim light of an almost burned-out bulb. There wasn't enough for next month's rent, not even close. Tears welled in her eyes as she placed her hands on her swollen abdomen, feeling the twins move within her. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm trying. I promise. I'm trying. Rising with difficulty, she made her way to the bathroom and stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror. Her face was gaunt, her once vibrant eyes hollowed by exhaustion and worry. But as she watched, something shifted in her expression, a hardening, a determination taking root. He is wrong about me, about us, she told her reflection, her voice stronger now. I will build something so extraordinary that he will deeply regret throwing us away, not for revenge, but for justice, so my children never doubt their own worth. The doctors who doubted she could adequately care for premature twins would be astonished to see that 5 years later, Noah and Nina would be bilingual children studying at one of Miami's most prestigious schools, thanks to the empire their mother began building in that hospital room. The doctors who doubted she could adequately care for premature twins would be astonished to see that 5 years later, Noah and Nina would be bilingual children studying at one of Miami's most prestigious schools, thanks to the empire their mother began building in that hospital room. With her pregnancy advancing into the 7th month, Naomi found herself spending more time in the public library than in her cramped apartment. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead as she hunched over one of the free computers, her swollen belly barely fitting under the desk. Her fingers moved swiftly across the keyboard, searching for information on luxury tourism markets. Experiências autênticas. O que os ultra-ricos realmente querem? She wrote in her cheap notebook, the pages already filled with meticulous notes and calculations. Her background as a tour guide had given her insight into what tourists sought. But now she was researching a different clientele altogether, the ultra-wealthy who could afford experiences beyond ordinary tourism. 15 minutes remaining on your session, the automated voice from the computer announced. Naomi worked faster, printing several key articles before her time expired. The printing cost consumed her bus fare, forcing her to walk the 30 minutes back to her apartment in the early evening heat. Halfway home, she felt it, a tightening across her abdomen, sharp and insistent. She paused, leaning against a storefront, breathing deeply until it passed. When a second contraction hit 5 minutes later, panic bloomed in her chest. No, 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 she whispered. It's too early. Please, not yet. The third contraction made her gasp aloud, attracting concerned glances from passers-by. A middle-aged woman approached her. ¿Está bien, señora? The woman asked in Spanish. Hospital, Naomi managed to say, clutching her belly. I need a hospital. The woman helped her flag down a taxi, an expense Naomi could ill afford but had no choice but to accept. As the cab weaved through Barcelona's evening traffic, Naomi closed her eyes, one hand protectively covering her stomach, the other gripping the door handle as contractions intensified. Hang on, little ones, she whispered. Please, just hang on. The emergency room was chaotic, doctors shouting in rapid Spanish, nurses rushing between beds, monitors beeping insistently. Naomi was wheeled immediately to the maternity ward, her vision blurring with tears of pain and fear. 29 weeks, a doctor announced after examining her. We'll try to stop the labor but prepare for the possibility of premature delivery. Hours blurred into a haze of medications, monitors, and mounting anxiety. Despite the medical team's efforts, by midnight it became clear that the twins were determined to make their entrance. Son prematuros, the doctor explained gravely. They'll need to stay in the NICU. Do you understand? Naomi nodded, too exhausted to speak. 3 hours later, amid a flurry of medical personnel and equipment, Noah and Nina Johnson entered the world, tiny, fragile, but alive. Each weighed less than 3 pounds, their translucent skin revealing delicate blue veins beneath. They were whisked away immediately to incubators, leaving Naomi alone in the delivery room, her arms achingly empty. The next morning, a nurse helped her to the neonatal intensive care unit. Through the glass of their incubators, Noah and Nina looked impossibly small, connected to machines that seemed grotesquely large in comparison. Tubes and wires monitored every aspect of their precarious existence. "Can I touch them?" Naomi asked, her voice breaking. "Yes, through these openings," the nurse demonstrated. "Talk to them. They know your voice." Naomi slipped her hand into the incubator, gently stroking Nina's arm with one finger. "Hello, my love," she whispered. "Maman is here." Tears streamed silently down her face as she moved to Noah's incubator, repeating the gentle touch. "I'm sorry you had to come so early, but I promise you're going to be okay. We all are." A nurse named Elena Vasquez became Naomi's unexpected ally during the long days that followed. In her mid-40s, with kind eyes and efficient hands, Elena took a special interest in the young mother who had no visitors, no family calling to check on the baby's progress. "You're alone here?" Elena asked one evening, bringing Naomi a cup of tea as she sat vigilantly between the twins' incubators. "Yes," Naomi replied simply. "Their father is not involved." Elena nodded, understanding without judgment. "And no family?" "My parents died years ago. I have an aunt in Brazil, but we're not close." Naomi sipped the tea, its warmth failing to reach the cold dread in her stomach. "I don't know how I'm going to pay for all this. I've lost 2 of my jobs, and the twins will need special care when they leave here." "If they leave," her mind whispered traitorously, a thought she refused to voice. Elena sat beside her. "My sister works for a wealthy American family in Miami. They have a vacation home here in Barcelona, visit twice a year." She hesitated. "You were a tour guide, yes? With education in art history, languages?" Naomi nodded, wondering where this was leading. "These people, my sister's employers, they always complain about the tours here. Too generic, too crowded. They want something special, something authentic." Elena smiled. "You could offer that. Private tours, customized experiences. My sister says her employers would pay well for someone who understands what they want." That night, after Elena's shift ended, she returned with a small laptop. "Borrow it, research, make a plan." For the next week, Naomi split her time between watching over the twins and working on the laptop. During the quiet hospital nights, while Noah and Nina grew stronger by increments, she crafted a business plan on the backs of hospital forms and discharge paperwork. "Barcelona Authentica," she wrote at the top of one page. "Exclusive experiences." She created a simple website using a free template, carefully writing copy that emphasized unique, personalized experiences away from tourist crowds. With Elena's permission, she listed the nurse's email as a contact point until she could afford her own phone. "My sister will send the link to her employers," Elena promised. "And I'll mention it to the doctors here. Some have wealthy patients who visit Barcelona." 2 weeks later, with the twins still in intensive care but showing promising signs of development, Naomi received her first inquiry, an American couple seeking a private art tour during their upcoming visit. In the hospital bathroom, Naomi practiced her presentation, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Dark circles underscored her eyes, and her face was gaunt from stress and inadequate nutrition. But there was something else there too, a spark of determination, of possibility. "Welcome to the Barcelona that only locals know," she rehearsed, straightening her posture and forcing confidence into her voice. "I'm Naomi Johnson, and I'll be your private guide to experiences you won't find in any guidebook." The following day brought a message from Elena's sister. Her employers were intrigued and wanted to book a tour during their visit next month. They were willing to pay €300 for a 4-hour personalized experience, more money than Naomi had earned in the past 2 weeks. That afternoon, for the first time since their birth, the nurses allowed Naomi to hold her babies outside their incubators. With Noah cradled in one arm and Nina in the other, each weighing barely 4 pounds now, Naomi felt an overwhelming surge of love and protective determination. "We're going to make it," she whispered, kissing their tiny foreheads. "Maman has a plan." As days passed, Naomi refined her business concept between feeding schedules and medical consultations. She researched hidden gems in Barcelona, made connections with local artists and chefs, and created itineraries that offered glimpses into authentic Catalan life unavailable to ordinary tourists. When a doctor expressed concern about the twins' care after discharge, questioning whether Naomi could manage their special needs given her financial situation, she met his gaze with unwavering certainty. "I will provide everything they need," she stated, leaving no room for doubt. "These children will have the best of everything, the best care, the best education, the best opportunities. That is non-negotiable." The doctors who doubted she could adequately care for premature twins would be astonished to see that 5 years later, Noah and Nina would be bilingual children studying at one of Miami's most prestigious schools, thanks to the empire their mother began building in that hospital room. The doctors who doubted she could adequately care for premature twins would be astonished to see that 5 years later, Noah and Nina would be bilingual children studying at one of Miami's most prestigious schools, thanks to the empire their mother began building in that hospital room. 1 year had passed since that desperate night in the Barcelona hospital. Naomi gently adjusted Nina's tiny sundress while Noah played with wooden blocks on the worn rug of their modest but clean apartment. Both children, now 12 months old, still bore the delicate appearance of babies born too soon, but their wide, curious eyes reflected a resilience inherited from their mother. "Today is important, my loves," Naomi whispered, kissing Nina's forehead. "Maman has a special tour." The twins had defied medical expectations, growing stronger each day despite their premature birth. Naomi had transformed as well, channeling her determination into building her small tour business while caring for her children. Dark circles still shadowed her eyes from nights interrupted by feedings and worries, but purpose had replaced desperation in her gaze. Outside a luxury hotel in Barcelona's Gothic quarter, Naomi waited nervously, her casual but neat clothing carefully selected to appear professional yet approachable. A Swiss banker and his wife emerged from the hotel's revolving doors, their designer luggage and practiced posture announcing their wealth without words. "Mr. and Mrs. Berger, I'm Naomi Johnson from Barcelona Authentica." She greeted them with a warm smile and firm handshake. "I'm delighted to show you a Barcelona most tourists never experience." For the next 4 hours, Naomi guided them through medieval alleyways where sunlight barely penetrated between ancient stone buildings. She introduced them to a third-generation leather artisan whose workshop remained unchanged for a century, arranged a private viewing of paintings in an artist's studio not open to the public, and concluded with a wine tasting in a cellar dating back to Roman times. "This was extraordinary," Mrs. Berger exclaimed as they parted. "Nothing like those dreadful group tours with 50 people following an umbrella." Mr. Berger pressed extra euros into Naomi's hand. "We'll recommend you to our friends visiting Barcelona. You understand what people like us are looking for." Naomi accepted their praise with grace, but her mind was already calculating how this additional money would cover the twins' special formula for another week. After bidding the Bergers goodbye, she rushed to retrieve Noah and Nina from her elderly neighbor who watched them during tours. That evening, seated at her small kitchen table, Naomi meticulously counted the day's earnings. The money was enough for rent, food, and even a small addition to her emergency savings. Each euro represented a step away from desperation and towards stability. As weeks passed, word spread among affluent travelers about the Brazilian tour guide who offered exclusive experiences beyond the usual tourist attractions. Naomi's phone began ringing more frequently, her calendar filling with bookings. On days when she couldn't find childcare, Naomi brought the twins along, their double stroller parked discreetly during museum visits or studio tours. Some clients found the babies charming, others pretended not to notice. Naomi became adept at nursing Nina while pointing out architectural details with her free hand, or changing Noah's diaper in elegant restaurant bathrooms between courses. Evenings found her creating handmade brochures at her kitchen table, carefully designing them to look professional despite her limited resources. Before dawn, she would slip into luxury hotels, discreetly leaving her materials with friendly concierges who had come to respect her determination. "Your tour was the highlight of our trip," wrote an Italian countess in an email that Naomi printed and pinned above her desk. "You showed us the soul of Barcelona, not just its monuments." 3 months into her venture, Naomi received a call that would change everything. "Ms. Johnson, this is Patricia Miller, assistant to Jonathan and Rebecca Rothstein. They own Rothstein Hotels and will be in Barcelona next week. They're interested in a completely private tour, something special that showcases authentic local culture." Naomi's heart raced. The Rothsteins were American hotel magnates whose properties catered to the ultra-wealthy. This opportunity could transform her fledgling business. "I'd be delighted to create something unique for them," she replied, her mind already constructing the perfect experience. For the first time since the twins' birth, Naomi hired a professional babysitter, an expense that consumed half the tour's expected fee. The investment was necessary. The Rothsteins required her complete attention. On the morning of the tour, Naomi kissed her babies goodbye, her stomach tight with both opportunity and maternal guilt. "Be good for Maria," she whispered. "Mama will be back before you know it." The Rothsteins proved to be surprisingly unpretentious for people who owned properties on 5 continents. Rebecca, a slender woman in her 50s with shrewd eyes, asked thoughtful questions about Barcelona's history. Jonathan, silver-haired and quietly observant, took genuine interest in the local artisans Naomi introduced. She guided them through hidden courtyards where orange trees perfumed the air, arranged for them to view a renowned sculptor's work in progress, and culminated their day with dinner in the home of a local chef whose grandmother's recipes had never been written down, only passed through generations. "This," Jonathan Rothstein declared over dessert, "is exactly what modern luxury travelers want. Authenticity, connection, stories they can't buy in a package tour." Rebecca nodded in agreement. "You should be doing this in Miami, Naomi. Our friends would pay fortunes for experiences like this." "Miami?" Naomi asked, surprised by the suggestion. "It's the perfect market," Rebecca continued. "A gateway city for European and Latin American clients. Everyone has seen the beaches and clubs, but few visitors experience the real cultural fabric." Jonathan leaned forward. "We have connections there. Hotel concierges, event planners. If you were interested in expanding, we could make introductions." That night, after collecting the sleeping twins from the babysitter, Naomi sat on her balcony, contemplating the Rothsteins' suggestion. Miami represented both tremendous risk and potential reward. Starting over in a new country with 2 toddlers seemed impossible. Staying in Barcelona meant continuing the slow, steady growth of her business in familiar territory. But something in Rebecca's words had ignited a spark of possibility. America, the country where Richard lived, where he had assumed she could never belong, might be precisely where she needed to build her future. For weeks, Naomi researched Miami between tours and childcare duties. She studied tourism patterns, cultural attractions, and, most importantly, visa requirements. The business tourist visa would allow her entry, but establishing permanent residency would require more substantial business success. Miami, luxury tourism hub, gateway for Latin American and European clients, she wrote in her notebook, underlining the words. The city's position as a crossroads of cultures played to her strengths, her language skills and cultural adaptability. The decision crystallized when Elena visited with news. "My sister says her employers mentioned you to several friends in Miami. They're already asking if you can provide services there." The farewell with Elena before her departure was emotional, both women crying as they embraced in the hospital where their friendship had begun. "My sister will help you get settled," Elena promised, pressing a piece of paper with contact information into Naomi's hand. "Call her the moment you arrive." 2 weeks later, Naomi stepped off the plane at Miami International Airport, a twin clinging to each hand. The suffocating heat hit them immediately, causing both children to become fussy after the long flight. Fear and hope battled within her chest as she navigated customs, collected their minimal luggage, and hailed a taxi to the address Elena's sister had arranged. The small apartment in Little Havana was a far cry from luxury accommodations, but it was clean, affordable, and located in a vibrant community where Spanish flowed as freely as English. Colorful murals decorated nearby buildings, and the scent of Cuban coffee permeated the air. "This is home now," Naomi told the twins as they explored the 2 small rooms that would shelter their new beginning. Within days, Naomi had created professional business cards, heritage voyages, exclusive cultural experiences. The name reflected both her vision and the legacy she was building for her children. Her first Miami client came through the Rothstein's connections, a Brazilian businessman looking to impress potential investors with an experience beyond typical corporate entertainment. "I need something authentic," he explained over the phone. "These investors have seen every beach club and steakhouse in Miami. I need to show them something different." Naomi crafted an experience that showcased Miami's cultural layers, a private viewing at a Cuban-American artist's studio, followed by a cooking demonstration with a renowned Haitian chef, concluding with live jazz at a historic venue known only to locals. As she guided the group through this carefully orchestrated day, Naomi watched the Brazilian businessman grow increasingly impressed. His investors, initially skeptical, became engaged and enthusiastic. "You've done something remarkable," he told her afterward, pressing a generous tip into her hand. "I'll be calling you for every business visit to Miami from now on." That night, watching her twins sleep peacefully in their new home, Naomi allowed herself a moment of quiet pride. The path ahead remained challenging, but each small success validated her decision, her determination, her worth. The woman who Richard Coleman considered without polish was about to refine not just her own life, but the definition of luxury for Miami's elite, transforming each rejection from her past into a stepping stone toward a success he could never have imagined possible. The woman who Richard Coleman considered without polish was about to refine not just her own life, but the definition of luxury for Miami's elite, transforming each rejection from her past into a stepping stone toward a success he could never have imagined possible. 3 years had passed since Naomi's arrival in Miami with twins in tow and determination in her heart. The cramped apartment in Little Havana had been replaced by a modest but comfortable 2-bedroom condominium in Brickell, where floor-to-ceiling windows offered glimpses of Biscayne Bay. On this particular morning, sunshine streamed through those windows as Naomi spoke on the phone while the twins, now 4 years old, sat at the coffee table coloring quietly. "Yes, I understand the royal protocol completely," Naomi assured the caller, making notes on her tablet. "Heritage Voyages specializes in cultural sensitivity. Your princess will experience Miami's authentic culture with absolute discretion and privacy." As she ended the call, Naomi took a moment to observe her children. Noah, serious and contemplative, meticulously stayed within the lines of his drawing. Nina, bold and expressive, created a vibrant explosion of colors across her paper. Though still smaller than most children their age, a lingering reminder of their premature birth, they were thriving in ways that continually amazed her. "Mama, look!" Nina called out in perfect English, then switched effortlessly to Spanish. "Hice un pájaro." "It's a beautiful bird, mina querida," Naomi replied, heart swelling with pride at her daughter's linguistic fluidity, a skill that already charmed clients when the twins occasionally accompanied her. A knock at the door announced the arrival of Fareed, her first assistant. a young man with a degree in Middle Eastern studies who had approached her after hearing about Heritage Voyages through Miami's international business community. "I brought the Arabic translations for our website," he said, settling at the dining table that doubled as Naomi's office. "And I've researched appropriate protocol for our Saudi clients. We'll need someone who speaks Arabic for these tours." Naomi nodded thoughtfully. "The Middle Eastern market is growing faster than I anticipated. Let's start interviewing candidates next week." The transformation of Heritage Voyages from a one-woman operation to a respected boutique agency had accelerated in the past year. What began as exclusive cultural tours had expanded to include bespoke experiences for ultra-wealthy clients who sought authenticity beyond the velvet ropes of typical luxury. Later that afternoon, Naomi took the twins to the home of a Venezuelan diplomat who had hired her to arrange a cultural salon. While she finalized details with the host, Noah wandered toward a baby grand piano in the corner of the opulent living room. "Does your son play?" the diplomat asked, noticing Noah's fascination. "He's never had the opportunity," Naomi explained, watching as Noah's small fingers hovered reverently above the keys. "May I?" the diplomat asked, gesturing toward Noah. At Naomi's nod, he guided the boy onto the bench and demonstrated a simple scale. What happened next stunned everyone in the room. Noah, after watching just once, replicated the pattern perfectly, then expanded it intuitively into a melodic variation. His small face was transformed by concentration, fingers moving with natural precision across the keys. "My God," whispered the diplomat. "The boy has a gift." That evening, as Nina chattered in Spanish with a Mexican client who had joined them for the cultural salon, Naomi observed her children with a mixture of awe and protective pride. Noah had spent 2 hours at the piano, absorbing instruction from a composer who happened to be among the guests. Nina, meanwhile, had effortlessly charmed everyone with her precocious intelligence and linguistic abilities. "Your children are exceptional," the client commented as the evening concluded. "Much like their mother." The words echoed in Naomi's mind as she tucked the twins into bed that night. Exceptional. Richard Coleman had found her boring, predictable, unpolished. Yet here she was, raising extraordinary children, building a business that catered to the very elite he claimed she could never belong among. 2 weeks later, Naomi received the call that would catapult Heritage Voyages to a new level. "Ms. Johnson, this is from the Saudi Arabian Embassy. We have a princess visiting Miami incognito next month. Your name was recommended for arranging private cultural experiences." Naomi's heart raced as she took meticulous notes. The princess, whose name would never appear in any documentation, required absolute privacy, authentic experiences, and cultural sensitivity beyond what standard luxury services could provide. "I understand completely," Naomi assured the embassy representative. "I'll personally oversee every detail." The following weeks were consumed with preparation. Naomi researched Saudi royal protocols, dietary requirements, and cultural expectations. She secured after-hours access to art galleries, arranged private meetings with local artists, and convinced a James Beard award-winning chef to prepare an intimate dinner showcasing fusion cuisine that respected Islamic dietary laws. On the day of the princess's visit, Naomi wore a conservatively elegant suit, her hair neatly styled, her demeanor professional but warm. The royal security detail scanned the gallery before allowing their charge to enter. The princess, younger than Naomi had expected, perhaps in her early 30s, moved with the confident grace of someone born to privilege, but possessed a genuine intellectual curiosity that became apparent as they toured the exhibition. "No one has ever understood my expectations so completely without my having to explain them," the princess commented as their day concluded with the private dinner. "You have a remarkable talent for anticipating needs, Ms. Johnson." 3 days later, Naomi received an offer she had never dared imagine, an exclusive contract to provide cultural experiences for all Saudi royal family members visiting Miami. "The princess was exceptionally pleased," explained the embassy official. This contract ensures your services will be engaged whenever family members travel to South Florida." With hands that trembled slightly, Naomi signed the prestigious agreement, the magnitude of the moment not lost on her. This single contract represented stability, legitimacy, and a level of success that would have seemed impossible during those desperate days in Barcelona. The following week, Naomi sat across from a bank loan officer, the Saudi contract serving as collateral for the business expansion loan she had previously been denied. "With this contract as guarantee, we can offer the loan you need," the banker confirmed, sliding paperwork across the desk. "Heritage Voyages clearly has substantial growth potential." The first real office of Heritage Voyages opened 30 days later, a modest but elegant space in a respectable commercial building near Brickell Avenue. The interior featured subtle luxury, original artwork from local artisans, comfortable seating for client consultations, and a small conference room for staff meetings. Naomi stood in the doorway of the empty office the evening before the official opening, absorbing the reality of what she had built. From cleaning floors in Barcelona to commanding her own company in Miami, the journey still seemed surreal. The most emotional milestone came the following month, when Naomi visited the prestigious Brickell Academy, application documents in hand. "I want the best for my children," she told the admissions director. "They deserve every opportunity." The school's reputation for academic excellence was matched only by its exclusivity and hefty tuition. As the director reviewed the twins' evaluation results, his eyebrows raised with genuine surprise. "Your children are remarkably advanced," he admitted. "Nina's linguistic abilities are extraordinary for her age, and Noah's aptitude scores are exceptional. We would be pleased to offer them placement." On the first day of school, Naomi watched Noah and Nina in their crisp new uniforms, small hands clasped together as they entered the imposing educational institution. Nina, ever the protector, held her more timid brother's hand, whispering encouragement as they joined the children of diplomats, executives, and celebrities. That afternoon, returning to her office, Naomi found a magazine left on her desk by her assistant. Opening to the marked page, she found an article featuring Heritage Voyages, the new definition of exclusive experience. The piece praised her company's innovative approach to luxury tourism, highlighting the authentic connections and cultural immersion that distinguished her services. A photograph showed Naomi guiding clients through a private art installation, looking confident and polished in a designer suit, worlds away from the desperate woman counting coins in a Barcelona apartment. At the moment she opened her first legitimate office, Naomi didn't imagine that in just 2 years she would be declining a $15 million offer for her company, while Richard Coleman was beginning to face the first stumbles in his career, still completely unaware of the storm approaching. At the moment she opened her first legitimate office, Naomi didn't imagine that in just 2 years she would be declining a $15 million offer for her company, while Richard Coleman was beginning to face the first stumbles in his career, still completely unaware of the storm approaching. 5 years had passed since that devastating night in Marseille. The Miami morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Heritage Voyages headquarters, bathing the elegant conference room in golden light. Naomi Johnson sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, her posture confident as she addressed her executive team through a video conference system that connected their offices in Miami, New York, and the newly established Los Angeles branch. The fourth quarter revenue exceeded projections by 42%, announced Carlos Menendez, her CFO, as digital charts displayed on the wall screen illustrated their remarkable growth. The team broke into spontaneous applause, a few whistles punctuating the celebration. Naomi allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The Heritage Voyages logo, a sophisticated design that combined elements of a compass and a key, now adorned the entrance of their Miami Beach office, a far cry from the handmade brochures she'd once slipped under hotel doors. "The Dubai negotiations are progressing well," added her operations director. "Their tourism authority is particularly interested in our cultural immersion program for their VIP visitors to the United States." After the meeting, Naomi's driver took her to the Brickell Academy where Noah would be performing in a small charity recital. She slipped into the auditorium just as the program began, her Armani suit a stark contrast to the casual attire of her early days in Miami. When Noah took the stage, his small frame dwarfed by the grand piano, Naomi's chest tightened with pride and emotion. At 5 years old, Noah Johnson moved his hands across the keys with a confidence and skill that left the audience murmuring in amazement. His perfect recall allowed him to memorize complex pieces after hearing them just once, a gift that had been nurtured with weekly lessons from one of Miami's most respected piano instructors. "He's showing signs of synesthesia," Noah's music teacher had explained during their last meeting. "He sees colors when he plays. It's exceptionally rare, especially combined with his level of technical skill." After the recital, while parents and teachers congratulated Noah, Naomi checked her watch and headed to Nina's advanced mathematics tutorial. She arrived to find her daughter engaged in animated discussion with her tutor, a retired MIT professor who had initially been skeptical about teaching a 5-year-old. "She has the capacity to skip 2 grade levels in mathematics," the professor informed Naomi, as Nina solved logic problems designed for middle school students. "Her spatial reasoning abilities are particularly extraordinary." "Is that good, Mama?" Nina asked in perfect English, then switched seamlessly to Portuguese for a more private question. "Yes, Mina querida," Naomi replied, stroking her daughter's dark hair that matched her own. "It's very good." That evening, as the twins worked on their homework with their nanny, Naomi reviewed the final layout for her feature in Miami Business Review. The cover showed her standing confidently in front of the Heritage Voyages headquarters, the headline declaring, "The Experience Queen Transforms Luxury Tourism." The photographer had captured her transformation perfectly. Designer clothing that highlighted her natural beauty, the poised stance of someone who belonged in the world of luxury and exclusivity, eyes that reflected both determination and triumph. The interview questions focused on her business philosophy and meteoric rise in the competitive luxury market. "I built this for my children," she had told the interviewer, carefully avoiding any mention of their father, "to show them that determination overcomes any obstacle." The telephone rang, interrupting her reflections. Her assistant's voice came through the speaker. "Ms. Johnson, I have Alexander Worthington from Prisma Ventures on the line. He says it's regarding their acquisition offer." Naomi took a deep breath before accepting the call. "Mr. Worthington, good evening." "Ms. Johnson," the venture capitalist's voice was smooth with practiced charm. "I hope you've had time to consider our offer. 15 million is generous for a company your size with considerable upside potential through our distribution channels." Naomi looked at the framed photo on her desk. Noah and Nina on their first day at Brickell Academy, their uniforms slightly too large, their smiles radiating pride and possibility. "I appreciate the interest, Mr. Worthington," she replied with the confidence of someone who knew her worth. "But Heritage Voyages isn't for sale, at any price." The silence on the other end suggested he wasn't accustomed to rejection. "Perhaps we should discuss this over dinner. I'll be in Miami next." "My decision is final," Naomi interrupted politely but firmly. "Heritage Voyages will remain independently owned and operated. I wish you success with your other investments." After ending the call, Naomi felt a surge of satisfaction. 5 years ago, she had been deemed worthless, discardable. Today, she had declined $15 million because she recognized what Richard never had, her true value. Sunday morning brought rare leisure time. Naomi walked hand in hand with the twins along South Beach, their laughter mingling with the sound of waves. Noah, usually reserved, ran ahead to chase seagulls while Nina constructed an elaborate sandcastle, directing her brother with the authority of a small general whenever he returned. "Ice cream?" Naomi suggested, pointing to a beachside vendor. The simple pleasure of watching her children enjoy vanilla cones with sprinkles, sticky sweetness dripping down their fingers, filled Naomi with contentment that no business success could match. These moments, ordinary, messy, perfect, were the true measure of how far they had come. Later that evening, after tucking the twins into bed, Naomi checked her email one last time. Among the business correspondence was a notification that she had been selected for Miami's Entrepreneur of the Year award. The ceremony would take place in 3 weeks at the prestigious Fontainebleau Hotel. As she prepared for bed, selecting a Carolina Herrera gown for the upcoming ceremony, Naomi's phone chimed with a calendar reminder. She froze, staring at the date. The award ceremony fell exactly 5 years from the night Richard had abandoned her in Marseille. The coincidence felt like cosmic validation, a reminder of how completely she had transformed the narrative he had tried to write for her. The woman he had deemed boring and predictable would be celebrated as an innovative business leader. The woman without polish would accept an award in designer couture, applauded by the very elite he claimed would never accept her. The morning of the ceremony, Naomi helped the twins prepare for the special occasion. Noah solemnly adjusted his bow tie in the mirror, his serious expression melting when she kissed the top of his head. "You look very handsome, mio principe," she told him. Nina twirled in her dress, the ribbon in her hair perfectly matching the soft blue fabric. "Are we going to be in the newspapers, Mama?" she asked, ever aware of their public image. "Perhaps," Naomi smiled. "But remember, what matters is not what others see, but who we know ourselves to be." On stage, receiving the award, beneath crystal chandeliers and before Miami's business elite, Naomi spoke from the heart. "I dedicate this to my children, who taught me that love is the true luxury of life. They are my greatest achievement, my purpose, and my joy." The applause was thunderous, but it was the twins' beaming faces in the front row that filled her with genuine pride. Later, champagne flowed as her team celebrated at an exclusive rooftop bar overlooking the city. "This is just the beginning," Naomi told them, raising her glass. "We're going to dominate New York next year." As the night concluded, Naomi checked her calendar before going to bed, realizing it was exactly the 5th anniversary of her abandonment. The symmetry was perfect, from discarded and desperate to celebrated and sovereign in precisely 5 years. While celebrating her award, Naomi had no idea that in New York, that same night, Richard Coleman was announcing his engagement to Vanessa Lockwood, heiress to the Lockwood Hotels, and that their paths were about to collide more dramatically than any Hollywood screenwriter could imagine. While celebrating her award, Naomi had no idea that in New York, that same night, Richard Coleman was announcing his engagement to Vanessa Lockwood, heiress to the Lockwood Hotels, and that their paths were about to collide more dramatically than any Hollywood screenwriter could imagine. 6 years had transformed Naomi Johnson from a discarded lover to a force of nature in the luxury tourism industry. The Miami morning glowed through the panoramic windows of her corner office as she examined the latest financial reports with quiet satisfaction. Heritage Voyages now occupied the entire 32nd floor of a gleaming Brickell Avenue tower, a far cry from the cramped studio apartment where she had once counted coins by lamplight. "The Dubai contract is all but finalized," reported her executive assistant, placing a stack of documents on Naomi's glass desk. "Legal just needs your signature on the final terms." Naomi nodded, her manicured fingers tracing the embossed company logo. Heritage Voyages had expanded beyond her wildest dreams, with 38 employees spread across offices in Miami, New York, and Los Angeles. The company that began with handmade brochures was now valued at $38 million, with a client list that included royalty, tech billionaires, and A-list celebrities seeking experiences beyond the reach of ordinary wealth. "And the children's schedule for today?" she asked, glancing at the silver-framed photograph of Noah and Nina that held pride of place on her desk. "Noah has piano with Maestro Delgado at 4, and Nina's language tutor arrives at 5 for the Mandarin lesson." At 6 years old, the twins had blossomed into extraordinary children. Noah's musical talent had progressed from precocious to prodigious, his perfect recall and innate understanding of musical structure allowing him to memorize complex pieces after a single hearing. Just last month, he had performed a simplified Bach concerto at a charity event, his small fingers moving across the keys with confidence that belied his age. Nina, equally remarkable in different ways, now spoke 4 languages fluently: English, Portuguese, Spanish, and French, and was adding Mandarin to her repertoire with characteristic determination. Her mathematical mind approached problems with a clarity that had prompted her teachers to create special enrichment programs just for her. "Ms. Johnson?" Her assistant interrupted her thoughts. "The conference call with Tokyo is scheduled in 10 minutes. 3,000 miles away in New York, Richard Coleman frowned at the quarterly projections displayed on the boardroom screen. The numbers told a story he was reluctant to acknowledge. His luxury tourism division was underperforming dramatically. Coleman Luxury Experiences has lost 12% market share over the past 18 months, explained his vice president of operations, pointing to a particularly discouraging graph. Our primary competitor continues to be Heritage Voyages, which has captured significant portions of our traditional client base in both domestic and international markets. Richard drummed his fingers on the polished table, irritation building. "Who the hell is behind this company? I want a complete analysis of their methods. What are they offering that we're not? Their approach is more personalized," the VP replied carefully. "They're creating bespoke cultural experiences that feel authentic rather than manufactured. Their founder has developed quite a reputation for understanding what the ultra-wealthy actually want versus what traditional luxury providers think they want." "Find out who runs it," Richard snapped. "I want to know everything about their operation." That evening, Richard sat across from Vanessa Lockwood at Le Bernardin, their regular Thursday dinner spot. At 34, Vanessa possessed the cool elegance that came from generations of wealth. Her family's hotel empire extended across 4 continents, making the Lockwoods and Colemans natural allies in the luxury hospitality space. Their engagement, announced 5 months earlier, represented a merger of interests as much as a romantic union. "The wedding will be the social event of the year," Vanessa remarked, scrolling through details on her iPad. 300 VIP guests, exclusive coverage in Vogue, and the governor has confirmed his attendance. Richard nodded absently, his mind still on the board meeting. The waiter arrived with their usual champagne pouring with practiced precision. "The Coleman name still carries weight," Vanessa continued, "despite the recent challenges with your tourism division." Her subtle emphasis on challenges wasn't lost on Richard. The Lockwood-Coleman merger would strengthen both families, but lately he sensed Vanessa measuring the scales with increasing frequency. His phone vibrated with an incoming call. Glancing at the screen, he frowned. "I need to take this." Stepping away from the table, Richard listened with growing anger as his event coordinator delivered unwelcome news. "Mr. Coleman, the Coleman's fortune has structural problems in the engine room. The chief engineer says it won't be seaworthy for at least 2 weeks. We'll need to find an alternative venue for the Middle Eastern investors event." Richard's grip tightened on the phone. "That event is happening in 3 days. Find another yacht immediately. This meeting is crucial for closing the Saudi investors." Returning to the table, he found Vanessa studying him with cool assessment. "Problem?" "Nothing that can't be solved with money," he replied, forcing a smile. "The yacht needs repairs. We'll use another one." Back in Miami, Naomi reviewed her weekly agenda as her driver navigated through evening traffic. "Confirm the event on the Atlantis for the European investors," she noted, speaking into her phone's recording app. "Prepare welcome packages with the cultural heritage materials we discussed." The luxury condominium complex where she lived with the twins occupied prime waterfront real estate. The doorman greeted her by name as she entered the marble lobby, taking the private elevator to their top-floor unit. Inside, she found Noah and Nina completing homework under the watchful eye of their nanny, Maria. "Maman!" they called in unison, abandoning their books to rush into her arms. Naomi knelt to embrace them, inhaling the clean scent of their freshly washed hair. Every day she marveled at how these extraordinary children had emerged from her darkest moment, their existence a daily repudiation of Richard's cruel dismissal. "Did you decide what you're wearing tomorrow?" Nina asked, practical as always. "For the yacht event?" "Not yet." "What do you think I should wear?" Noah looked up from the piano scales he had resumed practicing. "The blue dress that matches the ocean." "Perfect choice," Naomi agreed, smiling at her son's artistic sensibility. "And guess what? You two can come with me tomorrow." Their faces lit up with excitement. "Can we see the big yacht?" Noah asked, momentarily abandoning his practicing. "The one with the helicopter pad?" "Yes, the Atlantis is quite impressive," Naomi confirmed. "Remember, this is an important business event, but everyone loves meeting you both. You're my little ambassadors." Later that night, after tucking the twins into bed, Naomi selected her outfit for the following day, a sapphire blue Stella McCartney dress that complemented her warm brown skin perfectly. 6 years ago, she had worn second-hand clothes to clean office buildings before dawn. Now, her closet contained designs from the world's premier fashion houses. As she laid out her jewelry, Naomi's phone chimed with an email notification. Another offer to purchase Heritage Voyages, this one for $45 million. She deleted it without hesitation. What she had built was never for sale. In the bedroom next door, the twins slept peacefully, unaware that their existence remained unknown to the man whose blue eyes they had inherited. Naomi brushed a strand of hair from Nina's forehead, gently adjusting the blanket around Noah's shoulders. They were her masterpieces, brilliant, kind, confident children who had never felt the shadow of rejection that had once threatened to consume her. Tomorrow would bring another opportunity to expand Heritage Voyages' influence. The European investors represented potential partnerships in London and Paris. Naomi had prepared meticulously for the event on the Atlantis, unaware that fate had set a different stage. In less than 24 hours, destiny would reunite two lives that had followed such different paths, a confrontation that would transform Naomi's success story into a legend of poetic justice that Miami would never forget. In less than 24 hours, destiny would reunite two lives that had followed such different paths, a confrontation that would transform Naomi's success story into a legend of poetic justice that Miami would never forget. The morning sun cast a golden glow across Miami's skyline as Naomi applied the final touches to her makeup. The sapphire Stella McCartney dress complemented her complexion perfectly, just as Noah had suggested. She secured a pair of diamond earrings, a gift to herself after closing the Los Angeles office deal, and assessed her reflection. The confident woman staring back bore little resemblance to the devastated, abandoned girl from 6 years ago. "Mama, are you ready?" "Are you?" Nina called, her voice carrying from the living room where the twins waited, dressed in their carefully selected outfits. "Just a moment, querida," Naomi replied, spraying a subtle mist of Chanel No. 5 before stepping out to join her children. Noah stood by the window, his small frame impeccably dressed in a light blue blazer, white shirt, and navy bow tie. His serious expression softened when he saw his mother. Nina, ever the more expressive twin, twirled in her matching blue dress, the ribbon in her hair bouncing with each movement. "You both look perfect," Naomi said, adjusting Noah's bow tie with gentle fingers. "Remember, today is important for Mommy's company. There will be many important people on the yacht." "Will there be other children?" Noah asked, his voice quiet and measured. "Probably not," Naomi admitted. "But everyone loves meeting you both. You're my secret weapons." The driver waited with the Mercedes sedan in front of their building, opening the door with a respectful nod as they approached. Naomi helped the twins into their booster seats, her mind already running through the event details. The Atlantis, owned by petroleum magnate Adnan Khalil, was among the most impressive yachts that regularly docked in Miami. Today's gathering of European investors represented a critical opportunity to expand Heritage Voyages into the Middle Eastern market. As they drove toward the exclusive marina, Naomi reviewed key points with the twins. If someone asks what your mother does, what do you say? You create special experiences that no one else can, Nina answered promptly. And if someone asks about your school? We attend Brickell Academy, Noah replied. We're in the advanced program. Naomi smiled, pride warming her chest. These brilliant children were her greatest achievement, living proof of her resilience and determination. They had never known their father, never felt the sting of his rejection. In their world, they were cherished, valued, and extraordinary. The marina came into view, its waters glittering under the morning sun. Rows of luxury vessels lined the docks, but even among this display of wealth, the yacht at the private pier stood out, massive, gleaming, and intimidating in its opulence. As the car stopped, Nina pressed her face against the window. "Mama, look at that boat! It's bigger than our whole house!" Naomi collected her portfolio and guided the twins from the car, her Louboutin heels clicking confidently on the concrete. They approached the private dock where uniformed staff directed guests toward the vessel. "Welcome to—" a crew member began, then checked his tablet. "Oh, Ms. Johnson of Heritage Voyages. We've been expecting you. Please proceed aboard." Naomi glanced at the yacht's name emblazoned on its gleaming hull. Coleman's Fortune. A cold shiver of déjà vu ran down her spine despite the warm morning. Coleman, a common enough surname, surely a coincidence. Still, something about the name triggered an unwelcome flutter in her stomach. "Is everything all right, Mama?" Noah asked, sensitive as always to his mother's subtle shifts in mood. Naomi squeezed his hand reassuringly. "Of course, meu amor. Let's go aboard." They ascended the gangway, the twins wide-eyed at the vessel's grandeur. Crew members nodded respectfully as Naomi guided her children across the polished deck. Other guests, predominantly middle-aged men in expensive suits, mingled with champagne flutes already in hand. "Ms. Johnson, what an honor," greeted a man she recognized as the Saudi Investment Group's representative. "Your reputation precedes you. We've heard such impressive things about Heritage Voyages." Naomi engaged in polite conversation, one hand resting protectively on Nina's shoulder. The event seemed perfect, exactly the networking opportunity she had anticipated. Yet something felt off, a discordant note in the otherwise harmonious gathering. She had just accepted a glass of sparkling water when the atmosphere on the deck shifted. A group emerged from the main cabin, led by a tall figure in an impeccably tailored Armani suit. Naomi froze, the glass nearly slipping from her suddenly numb fingers. Time seemed to stop. 6 years dissolved in an instant as Richard Coleman stepped into the morning sunlight, laughing at something one of his companions had said. He looked older, with threads of silver at his temples, but unmistakably the same man who had shattered her world with casual cruelty. Their eyes met across the crowded deck. Recognition dawned in his face. Shock, disbelief, confusion, emotions flashing in rapid succession across features that had once been as familiar to her as her own. For a suspended moment it seemed the entire yacht had fallen silent, though in reality conversations continued around them, oblivious to the seismic collision of past and present. Then Richard's gaze dropped to the children standing beside her, his face drained of color as he took in Noah's serious expression and Nina's curious eyes, both perfect mirrors of his own distinctive blue. The shape of his jaw, the arch of their eyebrows, his DNA stamped unmistakably on two perfect children. "Those are they mine?" The question escaped his lips, barely audible yet somehow cutting through the ambient noise of the gathering. A woman stepped to Richard's side, tall, blonde, and aristocratic in her bearing. Vanessa Lockwood, whose engagement to Richard had made the society pages Naomi occasionally glimpsed. Her calculating gaze moved between Richard and the twins, the resemblance registering immediately in her narrowed eyes. The hum of conversation around them dimmed as guests began to sense the tension. Mobile phones discreetly emerged, capturing the unfolding drama. "Noah, Nina, why don't you go with the nice—" Naomi began, but Richard was already moving toward them, his steps unsteady. "I have children," he murmured, his voice unnaturally hoarse. "2 children. Why did you never tell me?" Naomi's transformation was remarkable, from momentary shock to absolute composure in seconds. She straightened her spine, chin lifting slightly as she regarded the man who had once dismissed her as worthless. "You said it wasn't your problem," she replied, her voice steady. "Your exact words, remember? I asked for help just once, and you told me to take care of it." The twins, confused by the sudden tension, moved closer to their mother. Nina took her brother's hand protectively, both children regarding the stranger with wary curiosity. "Richard?" Vanessa's voice cut through the thickening atmosphere, sharp as a blade. "What's happening here?" Guests were now openly watching, some discreetly activating their smartphone cameras, sensing the tabloid potential of the unfolding scene. "Naomi Johnson," Richard said, as if testing the name on his tongue after so long. You've changed. Heritage Voyages? That's yours? You built that?" "I built that and much more," Naomi replied with impressive calm. "But not thanks to you." The realization seemed to hit Richard physically, like a blow to the solar plexus. The woman he had considered disposable, unsuitable for his world, had built a respected empire in the same luxury sector where he operated. The children he had denied were exceptional, educated, articulate. "I need to talk to you," he said, his tone almost pleading. "Privately." "We have nothing to discuss in private," Naomi responded firmly. "Actually, we never did. Our interaction was always an illusion, wasn't it? An exotic experience for your list." Several guests had now recognized Naomi, whispers spreading across the deck. "That's the founder of Heritage Voyages," they murmured. "Just declined a $45 million offer for her company." Richard paled visibly. His own luxury tourism division was worth less than that. "Please," he tried again, moving closer to the twins. "You're both so perfect. I'm your father." Noah stepped back, instinctively shielding his sister. "Our mother is our family. We don't need anyone else." The words, delivered with the brutal innocence of a child, created absolute silence on the deck. "For 6 years I've built an entire life without needing a cent from you, Richard," Naomi declared with quiet dignity. "I'm not here for your money. I'm here because of a twist of fate that seems determined to confront you with the consequences of treating me as disposable." The silence on the deck was so dense it could be cut with a knife, but would be broken by words that would forever change not just that afternoon's event, but the power balance between two people destiny had decided to confront in the most public and explosive setting possible. The silence on the deck was so dense it could be cut with a knife, but it lasted only moments before Richard stepped forward, his composure visibly crumbling as the full weight of realization descended upon him. 6 years, he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. "They're 6 years old." His eyes, the exact shade of blue that Noah and Nina had inherited, darted between the twins with a desperate hunger, as if trying to absorb every detail of their existence. "I have children. 2 children who look exactly like me." Vanessa Lockwood's perfectly manicured hand gripped Richard's arm, her scarlet nails digging into his Armani suit. "Richard," she hissed, "we need to discuss this situation privately. Now." But Richard seemed incapable of movement, transfixed by the sight of the twins who stood protectively close to their mother. "Why?" he asked Naomi, his voice cracking. "Why didn't you tell me about them?" A flash of genuine disbelief crossed Naomi's face. "Tell you?" "I did tell you, Richard. I called you when I found out I was pregnant. Your response was, 'Not my problem, and probably not even mine.'" The bitter words hung in the air, a damning echo of his callousness. Richard's face contorted as though physically struck. I didn't think I didn't know. You didn't want to know, Naomi corrected him, her voice steady despite the emotional maelstrom. There's a difference. Several guests had edged closer, smartphones discreetly recording what was rapidly becoming Miami's most explosive social media event of the season. A waiter stood frozen, champagne tray suspended in mid-service, unwilling to interrupt the unfolding drama. "Richard, this is embarrassing," Vanessa interjected, her society smile strained to breaking point. "Your indiscretion is one thing, but this public spectacle is entirely inappropriate." Nina, ever perceptive, looked up at her mother. "Who is this man, Maman? Why is he looking at us like that?" Before Naomi could answer, Richard dropped to one knee, bringing himself to eye level with the twins. "I'm Richard Coleman," he said, his voice uncharacteristically gentle. I'm your father." Noah shifted slightly, positioning himself between Richard and his sister in a gesture of instinctive protection. "We don't have a father," he stated with the straightforward clarity only children possess. "We have Maman. She's everything we need." Richard flinched as though slapped. "But I am your father. Look at me. You have my eyes, my chin." "A biological connection doesn't make you a father," Naomi stated quietly. "Fatherhood is earned through presence, through love, through countless sleepless nights and ordinary moments, things you chose to have no part in." By now, the entire gathering had abandoned any pretense of disinterest. Executives, investors, and socialites formed a loose circle around the tableau, fascinated by the public unraveling of one of New York's most powerful businessmen. "I didn't know they existed," Richard protested, rising to his feet and addressing the onlookers as though they were a jury he needed to convince. "She never told me." "I told you I was pregnant," Naomi reiterated, her composure remarkable. "You said, and I quote, 'Take care of it or don't, the choice is yours, but don't contact me again.'" Whispers rippled through the crowd. A Saudi investor leaned toward his colleague, murmuring something that made the other man's eyebrows rise in disapproval. Vanessa's face had hardened into a mask of cold fury. "You told me there were no surprises in your past, Richard. You promised me complete transparency before I agreed to merge our families." Her voice dropped to a venomous whisper. "You lied to me." "Vanessa, this isn't what it looks like," Richard began, but his fiancée cut him off with a raised hand. "It looks exactly like what it is, proof that you're not the man I thought I was marrying." She twisted the massive diamond engagement ring from her finger, its $2 million price tag glittering obscenely in the morning sun. "Vanessa, don't!" Richard started, but his plea was interrupted by the soft splash as the ring arced through the air and disappeared into the azure waters of Biscayne Bay. Gasps erupted from the assembled guests. Someone whispered, "Did she just throw $2 million into the ocean?" Throughout the spectacle, Naomi maintained her dignity, one hand on each of her children's shoulders. "Noah, Nina, I think it's time for us to leave. This isn't the appropriate environment for you." "But the big boat tour," Nina protested softly, looking up at her mother with disappointed eyes. "Another time, Karita," Naomi promised, gently guiding them toward the gangway. "Wait!" Richard called, desperation evident in his voice. "Naomi, please, you can't just leave. These are my children too. I have rights." Naomi turned, her expression a perfect blend of pity and resolve. "Rights? How interesting that you've suddenly discovered your rights now that they come packaged in presentable, successful versions. Where were these rights when I was counting pennies for prenatal vitamins? Where were they during the 26 hours of labor? Or when they had colic and I hadn't slept for 3 days straight?" Her words landed with precision, each one a dart finding its mark. The assembled crowd watched in rapt attention as Richard Coleman, whose name graced buildings and whose decisions affected markets, stood speechless before the woman he had once discarded. "Ms. Johnson," a dignified older gentleman with a Middle Eastern accent stepped forward. "I apologize for the unpleasantness of this situation. Perhaps we could reschedule our discussion about Heritage Voyage's expansion to Dubai for a more appropriate time? Of course, Mr. Al-Fayez, Naomi replied with professional composure. My office will contact yours tomorrow to arrange a suitable meeting. The simple exchange underscored Naomi's position in this new dynamic, respected, sought after, a business equal to the men who dominated the luxury market. It was not lost on the observers, nor on Richard, whose complexion had grown increasingly ashen. You built Heritage Voyages, he said, the realization seemingly just penetrating his consciousness. The company that's been taking market share from Coleman Luxury Experiences? That's you? Ironic, isn't it? Naomi allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The woman you found boring and predictable has been outmaneuvering you in the marketplace for years. The woman without polish is now setting industry standards for luxury experiences. A muscle twitched in Richard's jaw as the full extent of his misjudgment became painfully clear. The woman he had dismissed as beneath him had built an empire that now threatened his own, raised children whose brilliance was apparent even in this brief encounter, and constructed a life of dignity and success that owed nothing to his name or fortune. I need to be part of their lives, he insisted, gesturing toward the twins who were watching the exchange with confused interest. They're Colemans. They deserve the opportunities that come with that name. They're Johnsons, Naomi corrected firmly, and they already have every opportunity they need. As she guided the twins toward the gangway, Noah looked back at Richard with an expression that seemed far too perceptive for his 6 years. Our mother taught us that what matters isn't who you're born to, but what you build yourself, he said in his quiet, measured voice. She built everything for us. Where were you? The question, posed with childish innocence yet devastating accuracy, left Richard visibly shaken. The assembled guests began to disperse, murmuring among themselves, many already tapping on their phones to share what they had witnessed. While Naomi and the twins descended the gangway with the same dignity with which they had arrived, smartphones were already sending the video of the confrontation to millions of viewers, initiating a media tsunami that would in 24 hours transform Richard Coleman from respected magnate to national villain, and Naomi Johnson from successful businesswoman to cultural icon of feminine resilience. While Naomi and the twins descended the gangway with the same dignity with which they had arrived, smartphones were already sending the video of the confrontation to millions of viewers, initiating a media tsunami that would transform Richard Coleman from respected magnate to national villain, and Naomi Johnson from successful businesswoman to cultural icon of feminine resilience. By the following morning, the video had gone viral across every major platform. News alerts pinged on phones across the country as media outlets scrambled to piece together the story behind the explosive confrontation. Television screens in homes, offices, and airports displayed the same headline: Coleman heir abandons pregnant woman, rejects twins, emblazoned across the New York Post's front page. In her Brickell condominium, Naomi sat at the kitchen island, scrolling through her phone with a mixture of disbelief and apprehension. The twins were still asleep, blissfully unaware that their faces were appearing on screens nationwide. Business Insider had already published a feature titled From Abandoned to Millionaire, Naomi Johnson's Journey, complete with side-by-side photos of her past and present. Ms. Johnson, I've fielded 37 interview requests since 6 this morning, her PR director reported via video call. Everyone from Good Morning America to The View wants an exclusive. Naomi shook her head. No interviews. Issue a simple statement requesting privacy for my children. That's all. Her phone buzzed with another notification. Coleman Enterprises stock had dropped 8% in pre-market trading, erasing nearly $300 million in market value overnight. 3 major investors had issued statements expressing ethical concerns and were reconsidering partnerships with Coleman subsidiaries. The board had called an emergency meeting to discuss reputational risks. Noah padded into the kitchen in dinosaur pajamas, rubbing sleep from eyes identical to the man now being vilified across the nation. Maman, Why was that man saying he's our father? Naomi's heart constricted. This moment, the one she had both dreaded and prepared for, had arrived sooner than expected. She patted the stool beside her. Vem sentar, meu amor. Let's wait for Nina, and then we'll talk. When both children were settled with breakfast, Naomi chose her words carefully. Do you remember how I've told you that families come in different shapes? Some children have a mother and father, some have two mothers or two fathers, and some, like you, have just a mother. The twins nodded, attentive as always. That man on the boat yesterday is the person who helped create you, Naomi continued. Biologically, he is your father, but he made a choice long ago not to be part of our family. Nina's brow furrowed. Why didn't he want us before? Her blue eyes, identical to Richard's, filled with confusion. Naomi reached across the table, taking her daughter's small hand. Sometimes people like your father only manage to see value in certain things. He wasn't capable of seeing the treasure that you are. That says more about him than about you. Is he a bad person? Noah asked, his analytical mind seeking categorization. No, Naomi answered truthfully. He made bad choices. There's a difference. 3 days after the yacht incident, Richard Coleman appeared in the reception area of Heritage Voyages headquarters, clutching an enormous teddy bear in each arm. His usual impeccable appearance had deteriorated, his suit wrinkled, his face haggard from lack of sleep and the stress of public vilification. I'm here to see my children, he announced to the startled receptionist, ignoring the stares from employees who immediately recognized him from the viral video. Naomi was in a strategy meeting when her assistant quietly slipped her a note. Reading it, she excused herself with professional composure that betrayed none of the emotional turbulence beneath. She found Richard pacing her reception area, the oversized bears looking absurd in his arms. Richard, follow me. She led him to her office, a corner space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Biscayne Bay. The contrast between them was striking. Naomi in a tailored Prada suit, the embodiment of success and control. Richard disheveled, clutching children's toys like talismans. Where are they? He demanded, depositing the bears on the floor. I have a right to see them. Naomi settled behind her impressive mahogany desk. They're not here, Richard, and even if they were, you have no legal right to see them. Rights? His voice rose. I'm their father. I have rights. Rights? Naomi raised an eyebrow, her composure unflappable. Interesting how you rediscovered your rights now that they come in presentable, successful packages. Where were these rights when they were born premature and I worked 3 jobs to pay their medical bills? Richard collapsed into a chair, the facade of control finally crumbling. I made the biggest mistake of my life, he admitted, his voice breaking. I can make it up to them. I have resources. I can set up trust funds, pay for the best education. They already have the best education, Naomi cut in. Paid for by me. We don't need your money, Richard. We never did. Then what? Revenge? Is that what you want? Naomi regarded him with something approaching pity. This isn't about revenge. It's about consequences. For the first time in your life, you're facing the real consequences of your choices. It's uncomfortable, isn't it? In the weeks that followed, Richard made increasingly desperate attempts to insert himself into the twins' lives. He sent extravagant gifts that Naomi returned unopened. He hired attorneys who backed down when she presented the emails documenting his denial of paternity. He tried to use his influence to orchestrate accidental encounters, only to discover that Naomi was more respected and better connected than he had ever imagined. The professional consequences mounted as well. Coleman Enterprises announced Richard's temporary leave of absence, while the board conducted an internal review of leadership culture. 3 major clients canceled contracts worth millions. His personal fortune had shrunk by $78 million in a single month. Meanwhile, Heritage Voyages announced expansion into Dubai and Tokyo. The company's profile soared, with Naomi named Entrepreneur of the Year by Forbes. The twins made a carefully orchestrated public appearance at a charity event, Noah playing piano and Nina reciting poetry in 3 languages, receiving a standing ovation from Miami's elite. At his lowest point, Richard Coleman, temporarily removed from his CEO position by board decision, sat alone in his Manhattan penthouse, staring at photographs of the twins captured from news reports about Naomi. His phone rang, his accountant informing him that stocks continued to fall, that 3 major clients had canceled contracts, that his personal fortune had shrunk by $78 million in a month. On a sunny Sunday afternoon in Central Park, Naomi spread a checkered blanket near the lake, unpacking a picnic basket while the twins chased butterflies nearby. Noah laughed, a rare, uninhibited sound, as he raced his sister to the water's edge where they tossed bread to eager ducks. From a discreet distance, Richard observed the scene, invisible to them. He watched Naomi gather the children for lunch, their easy affection evident in casual touches and inside jokes. He saw how Noah leaned trustingly against his mother as she read from a book, how Nina arranged flowers in Naomi's hair with concentrated precision. Their happiness was complete, undimmed by his absence. The realization struck Richard with painful clarity. He wasn't needed here. There was no gap in their lives shaped like him, no missing piece awaiting his return. Naomi Johnson had built something whole and beautiful without him. As he turned to leave, Richard finally understood the most painful truth. Naomi Johnson had never needed revenge. Her greatest victory was building a life so extraordinary, so complete and so rich with meaning that his absence had become irrelevant. There was no empty place waiting for him, no role to play. The story had continued without him, beautiful, meaningful, and perfectly whole. And that realization was more devastating than any revenge could ever be. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen